CVEN 424. This is the first of our recorded pandemic lectures. This is just going to be a short interview with Veronica Morgan. She is a principal, co-owner of one of the most successful civil engineering firms in the area. She's been doing this for years. She's got a bachelor's and a master's from Texas A&M. She's also married to one of my favorite people, my good friend Jim Morgan, who's a professor of engineering, used to be here, now in at Charles Sturt University in Australia. So Veronica is our local expert on civil engineering sustainability. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about sustainability and what it is today. And then after you watch this video, we should have a live session during which you could conceivably ask her questions or send questions to us and we can ask her. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Veronica, who's going to talk for just a few minutes about sustainability. Go for it, Veronica.
Thanks. I have been active here in College Station with a civil engineering firm for more than 20 years. Prior to that, I worked in the city of Houston for a large engineering firm and decided that A&M was where I wanted to be. And so I came back, went to graduate school, and I stayed and never went back. So I've enjoyed my career here. And the company that I work for and partially own has done quite a few projects in this local community that has featured some sustainability efforts. And as engineers, you all will find that as you enter the workforce, sustainability is one of those pieces that some clients will ask for. You'll find that some regulatory agencies will ask for, and as a general engineer graduate, you should be thinking through the sustainability design as you're designing projects in the future. So what is sustainable design? What does it mean? What does it mean to have sustainability within our projects? And basically, it just means that we have designed projects that improve the quality of life while working within our supporting ecosystem. So essentially, you're trying to work within the ecosystem that we have, utilize recycled materials if you can, try to design the project within the built environment that we have, as well as the natural environment. So for instance, we're going to try to work within a heavily vegetated area, try to save as many trees, as much vegetation as we can. And we have some projects that have done that instead of just wiping a clean slate and starting with nothing on the property and then building up from that, which is certainly an easier way to do a project, but doesn't always end up being the better project. So what does sustainable design for civil engineers in particular mean? Basically, we try to reuse things. We try to recycle things if we can. We try to design with longevity in mind, and basically using our construction methodologies. How do we do that? How do we get some environmental sensitivity in our projects? And I'll show you a few of those that we've worked with and have done that. As I said before, some of the sustainability designs are regulatory driven, meaning you have a municipality or a state agency or a federal agency that says thou shalt do X, whether that be thou shalt keep several trees on the project, you should keep trees over a certain size caliper size on the project, you shall use recycled materials on the project. So there are several regulatory agencies that do provide guidance, I guess, if you want to call it that, but in most places, the guidance has turned into regulations. And that means that you need to pay attention to those and make sure that those are contained within your design. In the state of Texas, we probably aren't as regulatory driven as other states in the US. We still, as Texans, have a very hard-held philosophy that I should be able to do whatever I want to do, and that has persevered through a lot of our state agencies and our local regulatory agencies as well. But we're coming along. There are several things, especially here in College Station, that they're trying to do to help with some of the sustainability efforts. Probably more so than regulatory driven, you'll see stewardship driven. I have several clients who said, I want to be green, which to them means sustainable. And how can I do that on the civil engineering portion of my project as well as my architectural portion of the project? And you'll find that the architects have typically done a much better job. Also, the mechanical and electrical and plumbing engineers have done a better job at trying to be sustainable. There's only a limited number of things that we can do as civil engineers, but there are things that we can do to be sustainable in our designs. Economically driven, that's a hard one. Oftentimes you'll have people ask you, is it more economical to provide permeable pavement rather than standard concrete or asphalt pavement? 9 times out of 10, it's not, but it is usually the better design if you can get it incorporated into your project. So the economically driven, we haven't quite gotten to the point where recycled, reused materials are more economical than our standard practices of what we do. But some of them are coming along, and we have a couple things that we've done that have been economical driven sustainability efforts. The next type of effort that you see is politically driven effort on sustainable design. And that's basically just from a political standpoint, is it more desirable to provide sustainable efforts on your project? And oftentimes you'll see politically driven efforts be not regulatory, but rather, we would like to see that a project would have more reused materials on the project itself. And so those are kind of more we wish rather than thou shalt. And in all these cases, you need to have owner buy-in on how you're going to bring sustainability to the project. One of the things that we do with clients is we ask them at the very beginning of the project, how sustainable of a design do you want to have? Do you care about that? Do you want it? And we propose to them some ideas that they might use if they desire that. By and large, we don't have that many clients yet who have really pushed for this type of effort on their project. Some have, but we still have a lot of folks who are, I just want the cheapest project I can get, and not always does sustainability fit in that category. Some of the local projects that we've done that have included sustainability are, we worked on the TAMU Vet Lab expansion, in which it was a lead project, and there are 2 main entities that really kind of promote sustainability. That is the LEAD program, and then also the Envision program that is through ISI, the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure, which is more of an engineering side of the coin. LEAD is really geared more toward architectural design, and the MEP projects are the process that I spoke to earlier, but it also has civil engineering components. So sites sustainable design is also counted in the LEAD points that you can get on a project. So A&M has a policy or philosophy on sustainable design, and they do try to get most of their new buildings into a LEED certified category. And the Vet Lab that we worked on was certainly one of those. And we worked with the designers of that project to look at building orientation, to try to reduce energy costs in the building with regard to the window placement. We also looked at site design and how could we use natural materials rather than a lot of concrete on the project. How could we collect the HVAC, so the air conditioning condensate that comes off the building. We looked at collecting that instead of letting it fall out onto the ground, and collecting it for a rainwater supplemental system for their irrigation system. So those are all things that as civil engineers you can do, and you can try to incorporate those into the project. We did get quite a few sustainable points on the LEED points on that project, which were dealing with irrigation water, trying to reuse water for that from the HVAC system, and then also from a rainwater collection system and utilizing that for the irrigation system. So we looked through all of those, and we did have to do some cost benefit ratios to see which ones had a higher cost to benefit ratio. Some of those, the HVAC system blow down water, it was such a large amount that it wasn't worth the underground tankage that we would have to put in and the cost of that in order to collect that for irrigation use. But we did use reusable materials on a lot of our project components there, and that helped with some of the LEED points as well. Several years back, we had a different project, the Plaza, which is now North Point Crossing, which is the large student housing project at the corner of Texas Avenue and University Drive. That project was one of ours, and prior to North Point Crossing being built there, we had an old hotel there that was a mainly concrete structure. We imploded that structure, and the contractor who was working with us on that asked if they could use all of the concrete and recycle it. So they did. They pulled all that, cleaned it, and out of it, and they are currently still selling some of that recycled concrete in town for riprap and for other materials. We used it here on our office that we built, the Copper Falls office complex that we own, and we used it as underground detention material. So we put in a French drain system and created underneath the parking lot, by use of the recycled concrete, a underground French drain system. So the rainwater and runoff from the roof systems on the building and from the parking lot enter into a trench drain in the middle of the parking lot, filter through the recycled concrete, and then exit the site downstream into a creek system. So we basically get a filtering system as well as detention in this enclosed system that we have underneath the parking lot. So when we built our site here, our own office building, we did include some sustainability efforts. Some people complain about some of our sustainability efforts because one of the things that we did is we created a buffer from us. We are on Highway 6 on the frontage road, but you cannot see our buildings. We kept all of the trees surrounding us. And so clients, when they come to us for the first time, go, "We can't find you." We said, "Yeah, we know," but we kept those trees on purpose, one, to buffer sound from Highway 6 to the building, but then also for, aesthetic reasons. Once people get to us once, they don't have a problem with it. And since we are not a business that needs visibility, it was something that we could do to help keep the natural environment around us. We have a couple folks that have used lake or pond systems on their site, and they are pumping from shallow groundwater wells into those lakes or ponds on their site, and then using that water from the pond or lake and using it as irrigation water on site. So that is certainly one of our sustainable efforts that we're using, as well as allowing runoff from the parking lots to go into those lakes and ponds, and using that water again as irrigation water. Irrigation water is probably one of the best ways that civil engineers can use to get sustainability points, if you will, or at least provide some sustainability design, especially here in the Bryan College Station area. Some of the other areas of Texas, San Antonio and Austin, in those areas that don't have the high clay content that we have, they're able to use a lot of filtering systems underneath their parking lots, such as the permeable pavement, and utilize some of that in order to try to decrease the runoff that enters our creek systems. Unfortunately, here in Bryan College Station, we've had some limited success with that, only because the high clay content, you really can't percolate that water through your permeable pavement down into something. Basically, you're creating a bathtub, and that water just sits there, and then your pavement fails. So you have to be careful with what you choose, given what you have to work with. I'm going to talk about is the Unitarian Church. We have a project called the Unitarian Universalist Church here in town. They're a new project to us. They have been very interested in sustainable design and sustainability. Any kind of green design that we can get into their project, they're interested in. Now, they have a limited budget, so we certainly have been doing some cost-benefit ratios with them as to what are the best ways for them to get green design for their dollar. And where we have landed thus far, the project's not complete, but we've gone through permeable pavement exercise with them. We've opted not to do that. We've looked at how to retain the natural environment on the site, how to locate the building in relationship to the existing vegetation, and even how to create an above ground detention facility on the site such that we're berming up the dirt or material rather than digging down. What that allows us to do is it allows us to keep all of the trees, and we're actually building the berm around trees such that we're saving as many of the trees as we can, and the only ones that we're taking out are those that are in the way of where the berm is being constructed. So everything is at grade. The parking lot drains at grade. We did not put any underground pipes in the system so that we could do basically a detention pond at grade and save as many trees as we can. So that one will be an interesting one once it's complete to see how well it functions. We think we've gotten that design pretty well along, that we're comfortable with it, and we've done trying to save as many trees, and the client's happy. They're happy with the amount of trees that we've been able to save on the site because it is a heavily treed location. The other thing that we looked at for the Unitarian Church was a rainwater collection system. So with the architect's help and the landscape architect's help, we are collecting all of the roof drains on that project and sending them to a cistern system that will be an above ground cistern that will collect that rainwater and then allowed to be used for irrigation water on site. So those are kind of the big projects that we've looked at, that we've done for the local community that have used sustainability efforts. And a lot of people say, is it worth it? You know, is it really worth doing that extra? Because it does take a little bit more design effort. It does sometimes take a little bit more money. And I would say, yes, it is. We have several other regulatory entities that say, yes, it is. And I do believe that it may cost us a little bit more, but in trying to save, I think water is one of the biggest and scariest elements that we have in terms of where are we going to be in 20 years? Are we going to have enough water? And I think if we can try to limit our irrigation as much as possible through the use of rainwater, I think that's something that we can do that will go a long way toward our water supply systems. So that one I think is really a really good sustainability effort that all of us should be trying to do, not only in the commercial developments that we're doing, but also in our personal private developments that we're doing as well.